started as a scientific officer, obviously, but really very early on at my time, I started trying to work with corporates, particularly trying to fundraise for events that we were running. A lot of the scientific work we do around networking is quite appropriate to look at sponsorship as a way to fund it. And over my time, I've worked on a number of sponsorship applications. Now, being CEO, I'm working on KT on grant applications and that type of thing. So hopefully I can give a different perspective. And I'm sure, correct me if anything I say isn't correct, so we'll see how we go. The first question then is quite a simple one. Why should you bother to try and seek corporate funding? Why do you want to go and deal with companies? And the very simple question to everything is that there is some money available. Primarily, those companies actually have budgets set aside for charitable giving, and if there's a budget set aside, you should try and find a way to get it. But why do they want to give to charities in the first place? And it's important to understand that. Essentially, for a company, they're always worried about their image, how they're perceived, and there's two major ways they can tackle that. One is marketing, put adverts on TV and make you watch them so you gain a certain perception about the company. The other thing is to look at their corporate social responsibility, to look at the way they're perceived and the way they interact with the world around them. And this leads to these CSR programs and setting up charitable budgets where they can try and interact with charities themselves, because that also affects their brand. And that's what we're trying to tap into. We're trying to help them boost their reputation and hopefully benefit from it ourselves as a charity. This doesn't only matter externally, and this is an important point, it really matters internally now, increasingly. Companies are becoming more aware that their workers and their staff want to feel that working for that company has a positive impact on the world. And companies are keen to try and show the people that work for them they can have an impact beyond, through the work they're doing and beyond that. And that's why many of the schemes you're seeing now are about getting more actively engaged with companies. And that's, again, something we can try and tap into to raise funds for charities, but also to get pro bono support or voluntary time to help you do the work. And obviously there is a benefit for tax for the companies if they give the charity as well, as long as they're the tax they pay, and that's always something we're looking to do. If they can boost their reputation in doing that, all the better. So on my little diagram I've joined there's an overlap between CSR and marketing, and in that zone in the middle is where things can fall out for looking at things like sponsorship. But generally we're going to be working more on the corporate social responsibility side than the marketing side. I think there's about three major routes to look at if we're looking to access some funds from corporates. So those are corporate grants, which are quite common, particularly in the pharmaceutical industry, event sponsorship, and then more active engagement types of projects. So I'll work through these basically first. Corporate grants really do fall very clearly into the CSR role, the corporate social responsibility. Particularly in pharma, they're very hands-off. There's a grant scheme and they want to give funds to appropriate projects. As I say, it's common in pharma and it's hands-off there often because they're worried about how they interact with charities, particularly with patients. They don't want to be seen to be influencing too much the role of those charities because they API code and there are often misconceptions around it. The application processes can vary greatly, and we do a lot of these grants ourselves. The bigger companies, particularly in pharma, will often have a fixed grant scheme. We apply to that at certain times, and the grant process is very similar to what you've heard before. In other cases, smaller companies, it's just about finding the right contact, put an application to them at an appropriate time, and you might be able to get a small amount of funding through. And generally, in this kind of scheme, there's not a major benefit to the company beyond the reputational benefit showing that they have a social conscience. For event sponsorship, things are quite different. This is where we're really in that blend between the CSR and the marketing budget. And in some instances, you will be tapping into the marketing budget of the company rather than their CSR pool. Generally, the involvement of the company is going to be on the day of the event itself. They're not going to want to help plan it too much necessarily, but they want to be present on the day and often try and raise the company profile in some way. Again, it's something that the pharmaceutical industry are very well versed in, and they have to deal with this kind of agreement, and it could work well for people in the rare disease area. Similar variation in application processes, and the benefits of the company are a bit clearer. It really is about raising their profile generally if they're sponsoring an event in some way. Active engagement is probably a bit newer, a bit more unusual, but it's likely tied to a CSR project that's trying to target the internal staff to show that corporate social responsibility to the members who are working for their team. And that means it's going to be hands-on. The companies really are looking for ways to actively make a difference. This is probably less common in pharma at the minute, but there's lots of different companies that are working at these kind of projects. You're going to be looking at financial benefits, hopefully, but definitely some kind of pro bono support or volunteer time from company staff, and accessing that expertise is part of the type of project, potentially. So I'll work through these now in a bit of detail. I'm not going to talk much about corporate grants. I think that's by far the most familiar to us, and it really does fit very much in with what we've already heard. There's going to be similar processes you go through in putting a grant together, whether it's for a corporate grant or a trust fund. But there are some general things to remember. Just because it's a big company giving you money, it doesn't mean the timelines are necessarily going to be any shorter than for other grants. This is something we've been learning a lot about over the last year at Findacure. Unfortunately, we're putting in our grants to corporates and they're just disappearing. A lot of companies decide they're going to change their grant program in the middle of the process, which can be quite slow and slow things up. And it can just generally mean you're going to still be waiting that 3, 6, even 9 months before you hear whether a grant comes through. So do be aware of that and plan for that in your application process. Job roles change within companies, as do the grant schemes, as I've said, and this again can slow things up a little bit, so be aware of that. Obviously, if you're applying to a pharma company, for example, or any company in general, they want to provide these kind of grants to a charity or disease area that they currently work in. So they want to have some kind of commonality between you and the work that they're doing. So you need to have a good reason why that company would want to support you. And if you've got that clear understanding, it's going to help and make you far more likely to secure a grant. One thing we also learned is try not to include benefits within grant applications. So sometimes you might think providing some small benefits to the company who are going to support you is a good idea, but these are often viewed completely as CSR projects. The company don't want to be seen to be benefiting from it themselves, they just want to give that charitable donation. And in some cases you can actually completely lose the grants completely if you offer them something that isn't wanted. So it's important not to fall into that trap. Okay, so benefits is a word I've mentioned here. So who is benefiting from these type of interactions? So generally with grants, it's all about how the charity are benefiting. It's just reputational benefit, if anything, for the company. But in sponsorship agreements and active engagement, there are more benefits going both ways. And it's important to understand what those benefits might be, what the company are looking for in order to win the support. So active engagement projects, you should view this as a partnership really, if you're looking to set something up. And you're trying to create an agreement between yourselves and the company that says how you'll work together for mutual benefit. The benefits aren't necessarily super obvious. It's about giving their staff the opportunity to contribute to society and building a more positive working environment for their team. And those are things you can do as a charity. Okay? You need to know your value in that. You need to know that what you're offering is something that they need to make them feel like a proper positive working environment. And there's value to that, and you shouldn't undersell it. Sponsorship is different again. It's probably always best to view this as a transactional interaction. View this as business. And you're trying to set a business agreement in place, ideally targeting a marketing budget. That doesn't necessarily mean the company will view it that way. Lots of companies, particularly in pharma, still view these from a CSR, and they don't look at it necessarily as a business interaction. But it's really important if you look at it that way yourself and you set the agreement up in that manner. What this means is you're looking to target benefits to them that allow them to promote the company in an appropriate manner. And because of that, you need to be aware of the audience of the event they're sponsoring and make sure the company are really clear of who that audience is. You don't want a company to give you a sponsorship for an event, turn up on the day and be upset that it's a room full of patients and they can't talk to patients. They need to be very clear beforehand who it is they're talking to, so they're comfortable with how they promote the company in line with any codes they're governed by. Okay, so it's a bit more of sponsorship. We've done a lot of this again, like I've said, with our networking events and our conferences. And it's generally best used to raise funds for those type of things, for events like conferences, but also gala dinners, maybe fundraising events and educational meetings as well. Something where there's going to be a large audience present that helps them raise awareness there, and probably with a target audience they're looking to reach. That could be patients, could be the general public, could be the medical profession. And you want to offer benefits that help the company raise its profile to that target audience. And the things you offer should reflect what they're looking for, essentially. So what I've got up here is a screenshot from part of our sponsorship package for the conference this year that Mary Rose put together. We try and offer a range of different sponsorship packages. We package it in this kind of gold, silver, bronze style, which is something that a lot of companies are very familiar with and happy to deal with. And obviously each tier has a different level of benefit. There are high level benefits, the more precious the metal, if you like, and the more sponsorship the company will give. So if you look here, you can see a bronze sponsor for the conference. There's lots of opportunities to be a bronze sponsor, so it's less exclusive. You get a complimentary conference pass. There's web links in the delegate pack for your company yourself. There's a chance to share some leaflets on a table at the conference, and all of your branding, as with all sponsorship levels, is shared along with all promotional materials and in the conference pack itself. And that is a set of benefits that a company is paying to receive and use the sponsorship to help pay for the conference. And that scales up as we go. So you get to silver, we're getting slightly more benefits. We're adding a description of the company, not just a web link, and they get a banner stand to display at the conference. At gold, you get a full exhibition stand, so they can show and share their work with the people who attend that conference. More conference passes, discounts to future passes, larger summaries, these type of things to allow them to show more of their reputation, more of their work to the audience. And by platinum, there's a single opportunity, so it's much more exclusive. You know you're the only company who's going to have that precedence. It costs a lot more to get it. You get more benefits with it and a chance to be a speaker at the event as well. And using these structures, you can send out very simple sponsorship packages to a range of different targets and allow yourself to quite quickly, hopefully, raise the funds you're looking for to run that specific event. You have to be happy at that event that part of what you're doing is in promotion for those companies. You don't want to allow sponsorship in on events where you're not comfortable with that. But it is a really simple way to bring in money for events if you're attracting an audience that the companies you're targeting would like to speak to. So, things to remember. If you're doing sponsorship, you want to ensure that you've got a sponsorship agreement in place, and that's between the charity and the event sponsor. And that just lays out exactly what you are offering them and what they're going to do in return for that. Because you're organising it, the onus really is on you to produce that agreement. With a grant, they're going to have the grant agreement in place because they're offering the grant. If you're organising the event for sponsorship, you need to put that agreement in place and be very clear in what's offered. And really be clear about the benefits you're offering, make sure you know what they are, and make sure you know if there are bespoke changes you make for a specific sponsor. So one thing we find quite often is some companies are quite worried about social media and how they're portrayed on social media, and they'd rather you just didn't talk about them there, because that's their safety approach. If you offer someone that, you have to make sure you follow through. You don't want to breach the agreement and upset a company who could then sponsor you down the line. Sponsorship is likely seen as business, and that's not a huge issue generally, but it's worth being aware of because it will count against your VAT allowance. So if you're a small charity that's not VAT registered, you have a certain amount of money you can raise in a business capacity before you have to then become VAT registered and charge VAT on what you're doing. And that's around the £80,000 mark. So if you're raising a lot of money through this kind of sponsorship, it can have an impact on how you're managing your money and that kind of thing. Worth being aware of down the line if you start to use this approach a lot as a charity. Same as with any grant, you should report back to your sponsors. You want to show them what happened at the event, how it went well, what they gained from it, what profile they raised, and how many people they reached through sponsoring you. It's basic in any kind of fundraising. Make sure you go back to the people you're raising money and tell them what success it was, and hopefully they'll come back to you. And with sponsorship, which is quite nice, you don't just have to look for the event costs. Technically, because it's that business interaction, and if you view it that way, as we say, the sponsorships are paying for your benefit package, not for the event itself. You can use the funds for that event, but you can raise a bit in excess, possibly. You can definitely raise money to contribute towards your core costs through that. And if they get what they paid for, which is the sponsorship package, you're in a good place because you treat it in that business way. Right, okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is active engagement. This is a bit more of an awkward one to think about, probably slightly more innovative, if you like. It requires you to have projects in place where you can engage hands-on with companies. And it's really important to remember what the company is looking to achieve. That's something positive, some boost, if you like, to the staff that they're working with, to let them feel like their work can benefit the community around them. So the companies really are looking to build an ethical company that has a social impact. That's one thing to remember. They want a chance for their employees to see the difference their work can make. They want a chance to strengthen the team, so they can view these often as team building like activities potentially. They want a chance for their employees to learn new skills, and these are all benefits that companies can get by working directly more hands-on with the charity. And you can find ways to tap into any of these requirements to gain benefits to you, either financial or time and pro bono support. So what kind of projects might they look like? So as I say, pro bono support is a good one. You might simply get benefit from lawyer service. They get a chance to work in a different area, in the charity area. You get no legal expertise. Equally, you might be able to engage with a consultancy They might be happy to give you some pro bono time, which might help, for example, in doing some literature searches. It could be in putting together a health economic project, which they are learning about working in your residency sector for free. You're getting the benefit of that, and at the same time, raise it. It could also work where a company wants to fund a certain project and help deliver it in some manner, and I'll talk about an example of that shortly. And also, many of these things might look like charity beer arrangements, and there companies might want to raise funds on your behalf, but they want to engage more with the project itself. So they want to be able to talk more to the charity and to see what the impact of the charity and the money they're raising is. These are all areas where you need to engage a little bit more with the company you're interacting with. Okay, so we're going through a few examples now of both this kind of active engagement, but also other types of corporate engagements too. So this one here is from a pharma company, usually, Sobi, and their interaction with WellChart. This is something that they mentioned at Cambridge OTD's Network Conference, I think it was last year. At Sobi, the team themselves gave feedback to management that they wanted to do something with charity that was a bit more actively engaged, that gave them a chance to see the difference they were making. They knew Sobi was supporting charities a number of different ways through grants, but they didn't get to get hands-on. So the management responded to this request and looked for different options that are out there. And what they found was the WellChild offer, which is the WellChild Helping Hands work. This is a simple scheme that they run on their website. They send out documents to companies, and they basically offer them the chance to come and work for a weekend to deliver benefits to a specific family who've got a sick child who needs some improvements to their home. So basically, the Sobi team provided a grant of £2,000 to buy a load of materials that they would use to renovate the garden of one of these children. They then sent a team of 15 people out to their home for the whole weekend, and they all worked together doing DIY work essentially, to renovate the garden, build new decking, put in a wheelchair-friendly swing, bring it up to the standard where the child can actually begin to access the garden themselves. It generated a huge amount of positivity with the team, so it was positive for that kind of team building ethos for them. The charity obviously benefited because they helped one of their beneficiaries and raised money to do so. The company got some positive feedback from the beneficiaries from within the team itself, and it had obviously a positive impact on those individuals that WellChild had scheme to help. So everyone really benefited from this interaction. It's a simple way, but all those individuals felt like it made a difference, and it means that they are more inclined to support WellChild in the future, which is a positive thing. I chatted to some of the people at Sobi about this, and one thing they said was that it's great to make a massive difference to a few individuals rather than a small difference to many. And this is quite an interesting ethos and mentality to try and tap into, and a way to try and look at these kind of active engagement projects. When you're looking for grants, when you're looking for sponsorship, companies are set up to do that, that's fantastic, but they're making a small difference to many, and they're kind of used to that. But for individuals, for active engagement, if you can find a way to make them feel that they're making a big difference to a few people, or actively see what the difference they're making is, makes them feel more engaged, you tap into that warm fuzzy feeling, which is essentially what we're trying to do, and ultimately it's going to mean they're going to be more willing to give and raise money in the future. So these kind of programs are a great way to do it, if you can think of a way to look at that in your own organisation. What I will just say around building corporate partnerships is obviously not very easy. As with all fundraising, it's hard work. You've got to have the right idea in place. And you always have to be where you're competing with the big names like Cancer Research UK, like Macmillan, particularly for things like Charity of the Year, when lots of people in the company know those names, it's likely they're going to move towards that. But many companies are always on the lookout for smaller charities to support, so you shouldn't necessarily be put off by the mountain and the decline which can be perceived. What is important though is that success does depend on making the most of the personal contacts you have and your community's passion for the cause, which is kind of what's already been said. Making sure you tap into that emotional connection to the story. Sharing those stories with individuals and companies will ultimately give you chances to pitch to them or get their support. Don't be afraid to start small when you're trying to build corporate relationships. Just with anything, they become personal relationships, and if you can share that story, they can grow over time and become something more sustainable or deliver a larger amount of funding down the line. Try and be realistic in your targets as well. You don't want to invest days and days of your time into an application when there's really a small chance of success and little benefit. You want to be logical about where you're investing the resources. But equally, you need to be agile and ready to make the most of any new connections or opportunities you have. If you come across someone who works for a company and they seem interested in the cause you're running, you shouldn't be afraid to make an approach to ask them if there's some way they can help you or support a program that you're doing. Okay, another example now, looking more at that kind of build up of personal information, personal connection actually. And this is from Wolfram Syndrome UK. And these are a really small patient group that I'm sure some of you know. It's for an ultra-rare condition. I think there's about between 70 and 100 patients in the UK. But they've actually developed a number of small-scale corporate relationships by looking at personal connections and local businesses that have a reasonably good financial impact on the charity and what they're trying to do. So simply put, the brother-in-law of a founder runs a company in the area, and they've managed to set an agreement with them to provide a level of sponsorship for their conference each year. So they're an annual conference, and each year there's this company, which I think runs earth-moving vehicles, so it's very far removed from the world of medical research. They donate roughly £5,000 to sponsor the conference. Furthermore, they also provide sponsorship for the fundraising golf day of the company, the charity group. Now, that connection then led to something else. The brother-in-law's insurance broker entered the team into the golf day. That's another company connection. But because they, at the golf day, heard a talk from the founder of Wolfram Syndrome UK, they heard about the cause itself and decided to get more involved, which then led for the insurance broker to sponsor the Wolfram Syndrome UK golf day last year in 2017 for the first time. So it's broadening the pool of corporate supports they have, and we're hoping to re-establish that relationship this year. Furthermore, in a golf day, you can get companies to sponsor groups. So they have additional funds coming in through the sponsorship of that event itself. Just small ways for companies to raise their profile in a local area and has a benefit to the charity. And a final relationship this charity has is with a local business that's purely pro bono. They provide support in organising a fundraising 80s night every year. So they help secure the DJs, the venue, that type of thing, put the actual organisation in place for the charity, which then allows them to bring in a large amount of funds from the event itself. Have a big impact on a charity the size of the business. Another one, a bigger charity, one we're all familiar with, hopefully, Swan UK. Still relying on personal connections to drive really meaningful corporate partnerships. So you may have noticed a few years ago that Swan secured a position in one of the House of Fraser's selected charities. Now this is a really big impact actually. So House of Fraser runs an annual charity event each year to support the 3 or 4 charities they are supporting. And in the 2017 RCPCH report, you'll see that that was worth over £63,000 in that year to Swan UK. Now this all came about because one of the Swan supporters, one of their patient representatives, actually works at the House of Fraser. They talked about their experiences with Swan, they talked about their experiences with their child, and they shared that with the team as a whole, and they put Swan UK forward as a potential charity of the year for House of Fraser. And that opened the door to allow the Swan UK team to go in, to pitch to this large retailer, and ultimately has led to a very substantial amount of funding for that charity. So making the most of that personal connection of the connections that your supporters and beneficiaries have can be a really good way to begin to open the doors to these corporate relationships. And now I'm going to talk a bit about some of the stuff we've done. Most of these are more in the pro bono support area, but again, they've spiralled in different ways. So we worked a lot with Costello Medical Consulting, as some of you will know. The initial contact there was a purely personal connection. I don't think we worked with. We've actually been working with them for now over 2.5 years. They've supported us in lots of different ways. So we've had pro bono support with design. They've also supported us in writing papers, which we're trying to get published right now. They've done some economic modelling for us, again, for free, some paid, some for free, helping us build the work we did on social impact ones. But that's also grown into them providing sponsorship for our essay competition, which has been, I think, 2 or 3 years on the trot. And they've also done community fundraising, members of their team doing runs for us, which has all helped to add to the impact that relationship has for us as a charity. For the company itself, it's also had a benefit. It's important to recognise that. They've increased their profile in the rare disease world, and they've actually now gone on to set up a specialist rare disease team. And they've gained experience in working in rare diseases, which has helped them to do that. And all that's through that pro bono interaction. Another example is with Kudos Health. So these guys are a company that runs surveys in the health field, and the initial contact was made because they attended one of our webinars. So they saw the work we were doing and came and approached us. We've been working with them for about a year, maybe a touch longer. They've supported us in 2 ways. They helped us to put an event together on GDPR at the end of last year, which some of you may have attended. And they basically organised that in collaboration with Libby. And they've also helped us with fundraising and awareness raising, so that all the surveys they do, people have a chance to give a donation. And Findacure is one of the main charities that people can donate to. doesn't bring in a vast amount of money, but it does bring in a good, nice, constant level of fundraising for us, which is fantastic. How does the company benefit from that? Well, partly it's just, as I say, them to feel that they are a socially responsible company and share the work that they do and we do with all of their staff. But it also provides an incentive for people to complete their surveys, because then they can give something to charity down the line. So that's a simple benefit. And it's been a really positive engagement for us, and we hope to develop that further in the future. Finally, one we're working on right now with a company called Ipsos Healthcare. Again, let's come back for a personal connection. It's something that's been developed, but not really started yet, but we're hoping that they're going to help us out with some pro bono support in the office, sending members of their team in to help us writing guides for our online portal, the e-learning portal. And they're also talking about doing some fundraising events in-house to raise funds in Findacure. Starting small, but it could develop in the future. The benefit there is, again, it's working in their staff fulfillment. This is actually part of their CSR scheme, where they give every member of staff 2 days a year to work for something in charity, and they want to find something that has a health connection, and it will increase their residents' experience. Okay, so summary then. It's not always easy to win corporate support, but there are lots of different ways and avenues you can look into, and you should explore them whenever you can, because they can yield significant funding to support what you're trying to do. Remember a few things. Always target your efforts really wisely. Target companies that you think you have a connection to, and try and use the right funding stream for the right project. Make the most of personal connections where you can, just to open doors and give you opportunities, and use the enthusiasm and the connections of your supporters as well, if possible, because it can always give you a first step on the road. Always be professional in your approaches and in the agreements you're setting up. You want to make sure these are robust and it's clear to everyone what you're entering into. But do remember that you're still dealing with people, and it's ultimately the story and the connection that you build between your personal relationships between yourselves and corporates that will help you secure the money and the support, and hopefully make that more sustainable. Feel free to recognise the value you have. Say how you can help them. There are different ways you can do that, and recognise the value you bring to them in helping them, their reputation, and also helping their staff feel that they can contribute to wider society. But do remember it's not always the most sustainable route of fundraising. You can get longer term agreements, but they'll take time to develop, and that's through relationship building. If you go full out for corporate support, you're not necessarily going to have a sustainable fundraising stream. It's really important to make sure that's part of a whole package. Remember the long term that we and with that, I will leave you. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope it's interesting. Cheers.